All right, welcome everyone. Today we are talking about ADHD realistic teaching strategies. Now my name is Debra Shepherd and I run Light Up Literature Curriculum, but today we're only focused on you and how we can help you be successful when you're homeschooling or even working with your kiddo if they're in traditional school, when they have ADHD or some neurodivergent situations. Again, my name is Debra Shepherd. At the end, I'll be happy to share my contact information, but let's jump in and get started. So there's a couple of things we're going to talk about today that we want to go over. So our overview is we're going to talk about ADHD realities first. Best teaching practices, and this works whether you're just supporting your kiddo at home after they're in a certain curriculum or at a public school, private school, whatever, or if you're completely homeschooling. Now with this also means there's some great tips on how to make this easier, not just for your kiddo, but also for you, so you're not pulling your hair out, because it's a lot, and if you have more than one kiddo in your family, which most homeschool families do, it can be really challenging, overwhelming, and sometimes just downright scary. And so we want to normalize reality versus what people might have to say. So one of the best things we can do is the power of choice. Now choice is, when I say the power of choice, we want to give our kiddos choice. When you're in that preteen, teenage time frame, you have to remember, whether they're ADHD or not, their emotions, they're growing as people. Remember when we were that age, our people skills were lacking a little. We were still refining things, and that's okay because that's part of growing up, right? But we definitely needed some type of structure. But we didn't necessarily need, you gotta get up at 7:30, you gotta be at breakfast at 7:45, you know. I'm not talking about that, but the power of choice, what I'm talking about, is when we give our students, our kiddos, specific tasks. You have to do all of these. You have to clean your room, you have to do your homework, you have to take out the trash, whatever the goals or requirements are. Or if it's strictly for school, you need to take care of your English, your math, your history, whatever specific goals you have for your kiddo that day. Now, the key is, with choice, you only give them options that you approve. That's the key. The power of choice is when you give the kiddos the options that you approve of and what you want done. They then get to choose which ones they do first in what order. This is important because this gives them ownership of what they get a sense of ownership because they get to decide, I'm going to do this here, I'm going to do that there. And of course, some days they're going to be like, I don't want to do anything. Of course, because guess what? Sometimes we don't want to do anything. So we have to remember they're people and they're little people at this point, and they're still growing. So give them choices. Whether you want it time limit, you've got to do your timed reading, you've got to do whatever is natural for your homeschool family, for your family at home. We just want to give them choice so that they're empowered and they feel like they have a say. It is much more powerful for them to feel like they have a say than for us to still be telling them, you have to do this, you have to do this. When they feel like they have more of a say, they're more engaged and more compliant. Now, our next it's a great tool, especially with ADHD kiddos or when the day is just not going the way you planned. Understanding environment. Something as simple as changing where your lessons are can change the reception of your lessons. Whether they're doing work on their computer, it's a big difference to do it at the kitchen table versus go outside and have snacks set out and it's more relaxed. It gives them a mind shift change. And studies show that ADHD kiddos, especially with high anxiety or depression, thrive when they are outdoors. whether it's sunlight and the natural sunlight and the fresh air, the other sounds that they're hearing, because they're already going to be noticing those things, but those are also great opportunities for organic learning. So what is that sound? I don't know. What is that? It's okay. You homeschool for a reason. You want to enrich your child's learning, and that's the best way to have natural organic learning. When they have a question, even though that might not be what was on the agenda, you just break, and we follow that natural curiosity. One, it makes it better for you as a parent, because even if you don't know, do you know how excited they get when you say, you know what, I don't really know, let's look that up. And they get to be educating you. That role reversal is so fun for them. They love it, because then I taught mom how to do this, or I taught dad, or I taught grandma, or I taught my little sister this, or my older brother thought he knew better, and I proved him wrong by showing this. These are things that are healthy ways to have engagement, but also keep our kiddos focused and learning, even if it's not exactly what we planned that day. Life doesn't work that way. Our homeschool classrooms don't work that way. Public school classrooms don't work that way. That's not realistic. So we have to kind of break that mindset away and give them the opportunity to have different learning. Whether now I wouldn't say let's go to the mall and have lessons. Maybe that might work for your family. It would not work with my daughter. But going outside, going to a park, sitting on the back porch, going to the pool, and the breaks, or PE, is taking a break and going swimming. Guess what? We have done that many a time, and it's awesome, because it also makes it fun, and it's less things for you to have to do. You're not having to worry about entertaining or keeping a strict schedule. It's organic, it's fun, and it's definitely more meaningful. My daughter tells me, even now, she just graduated college. She's 21, and she tells me all those little things that we did that were not planned are the things that she looks back and remembers the most. So that's definitely something I encourage. I definitely encourage, whether you're in a traditional classroom, public school teacher, private school teacher, homeschool parent, it really makes a difference. And next, best teaching practice is definitely going to be interest-based learning. Now, if your kiddo, like a lot of ADHD kiddos, there's usually two swings. They love reading, or they hate reading. So if you're dealing with one side of that, of I love reading, that's great. They might not like writing. So when we focus on their interests, and we have an outline of these are the things I'd like you to do. Some of your curriculums will already have that built in for you. Some curriculums are a little more flexible, where you can create that by yourself. So when we invest in what our kiddo's interested in, it doesn't matter whether it's Fortnite or the Roman history. It doesn't matter what they're into. I mean, as long as it's healthy and you approve, of course. But these are the things that they're going to get into. And no matter what they're interested in, you can pull in science, math, English, writing, and grammar. Everything has all of those. Art has that. There's science. There's so many opportunities. And when you make it more like a curiosity based on what they're into versus being told what they have to, yes, of course they're going to have to study things that they're not interested in. That's life. We have to do that. But with that being said, there's no reason you chose homeschool for a reason, because you wanted to teach your kids. You wanted them to have this love for learning in a different way, where they can be accepted and be who they are. And that's what matters. So interest-based learning, huge thing. All right, another amazing way to get your kiddos really engaged, especially if you're in a homeschool pod, this is very fun. Competition, positive competition. ADHD kiddos thrive with competition. One of the facts about ADHD people, whether they're kiddos or adults. When they are running towards a goal, they are working. But once they attain that goal, the thing is, they don't get a sense of completion. At that point, they have turned around and started looking for their next goal. So even though you're so proud and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so amazing, and they feel like that for like half a minute, and then it's like, okay, what's my next challenge? They thrive on the challenge. They need the recognition. That's so important, especially for a kiddo. If they don't feel like they've been accepted in the past, they struggle with just being comfortable in their own skin. Especially if maybe you have family that has some of your kiddos are ADHD, some of them aren't. That's very normal. And so when you have that situation, having those healthy competitions, for example, when I was in a public school teaching, I had a wide range of varieties of kiddos in my classroom. And we would do vocabulary.com. It's called a vocabulary jam. We'd spend 10 minutes practicing at the beginning of every class, practicing our vocabulary words for the week. And they would do it independently. And then on Wednesday, we would have a pre-vocabulary jam. And so we could either make it to where they could pick their teammates, or I had it automatically separate their teammates. Now this is fun because it brings community into the competition. Because so then we'll start huddling up to make sure that everyone gets the right answers and that everyone's doing it right. That's organic learning. It's competition, it's fun, it's themed. And I will tell you, at my last school, we did this with another classroom. So they were in their classroom, we were in ours. At the end of the game, my class lost. At the end of the game, both classrooms roared so bad, we had principals and security come into our hallway because the kids were so excited and had so much fun. If you can do that in an English classroom, that's like nirvana. That is where it's at. So when you do this in your homeschool pods or even in your family, when you're doing this, it's so rewarding and it gives them excitement. Like even with quizzes, tests, every kiddo's on a different level. Guess what? That's normal. That's everywhere. So everyone has their certain limit. All right, if we average this at the end of the week, then we have this little reward. For me, if my kiddos did 10% higher than what I wanted, we had donuts. Donuts aren't expensive. It's an easy way to, feel the win. We also had Skittles. I got a Brookstone egg that would dish out Skittles. Little things like that, they don't need this big elaborate party for every little thing. But they do need those little moments of recognition and I'm proud of you. And since they're in that middle school age where they're still like, I don't know how to accept that, but I really want to be super excited, when they're feeling that way, you have to give it to them in small little doses. And you can talk about it later once they bring it up, but let them have their small little doses. All right, cross-curricular learning opportunities. That is our next one. Like we had mentioned with interest-based learning, like I mentioned, cross-curricular learning opportunities can go with the interest-based or whatever you're working on. My favorite way to do cross-curricular learning opportunities, novel studies. For me, novel studies. And don't let them pick their novel. Because there's going to be history, there's going to be something that they can always research. Because almost everything, especially, so for example, Harry Potter. It doesn't sound you're like, that's a kid's book. Well, yes, but Harry Potter also has connections to World War I, Edinburgh, Scotland. The authors, all types of information about the authors use how she created that. Personal growth, so if you're looking for social emotional learning, you've got that opportunity in there. Also, the very real things which our middle school kiddos are definitely going through, and in high school too. The feeling of belonging, or feeling like you're the odd one out. So let them enjoy whatever it is. You can level it up or level it down. And if they don't like reading, connecting a book with a movie is key. One, for every chapter you can get a clip from the movie for that chapter, what gives them interest before they start reading. These are things that draw them in and keep them engaged. Also, movement. Allow them to move around. Who cares if they're fidgeting? So what? That's not what we care about. We care about the learning, the growth, personal growth, educational growth. That's what matters. That, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter in 20 years if they had an A in whatever novel study. If they grew and learned and could still talk about it in 20 years, that's the gold, right? All right, so now we're going to transition a little bit to outcome focuses, because this is really hard for parents. It's hard for everyone, but I find this very hard for parents to understand. Outcome focuses not only for your kiddos, but sometimes you have to recalibrate as well. When we are young, in our preteens and teens, we have attitude. We are learning how to be an adult. So with that, as a parent, you have your non-negotiables, absolutely, because that's the way it goes, that's life. But our outcome focus needs to focus on the skill, the thing you want completed. If they roll their eyes, so what? Let them roll their eyes. If they are stomp off, okay, stomp your way to the dishwasher and get the dishes done. That's what I wanted done. So that's where we, as parents, it can be very hard because we want to have respect and order and structure and focus and everything to be perfect and great. And yes, of course, we all want that. That's awesome. But that's not realistic. And when we have kiddos who are already struggling with emotional regulation control, having them have to focus on not only completing a task that more than likely they're only giving you attitude about a task that they don't want to do anyway. So while it is annoying and frustrating, it is also very important to let them learn the respectable bounds of how they're going to respond. And whether they get mad and storm off, as long as they get that laundry done or get their homework done, who cares? It doesn't matter. We're focused on our outcome, what we want done. Now, I'm not saying that like they throw a pillow at you or something, like let's keep it real. We're not gonna go crazy like that, but minor things, roll your eyes. I used to tell Grace all the time, she was a big eye roller and stomper. Like, roll them twice, baby, now go get it done. Because that was just our non-negotiables in our home. With our non-negotiables, you set those non-negotiables. Those are the things I wouldn't set more than 2 or 3, or more than 3 to 5. 3 is really where it is. For me, at least for our family. Those are the things that don't get broken. I don't care how you sass me when I want you to get something done, as long as you get it done. You're not gonna cuss at me, you're not gonna be disrespectful. You know, there are certain requirements, but other than that, I can let the rest of it go. But you have to come up with your non-negotiables for your family. And here's the other key, which makes it hard, especially after a long day, is even if you are exhausted, you are done, you just cannot take any more, if that's part of your non-negotiable, and they press that boundary and you don't follow through, it is pointless. You have to follow through. That is the structure, that's where they learn their boundaries, and they know it doesn't matter how tired mom, dad, whoever is, if I do this, pray for me. That kind of situation. They need to know that those are clear outlines, clear things that are not going to be discussed. It's, you know the rules, that's the way it is. So, let's take a look about, also when they're having these things, these outcomes, just pure honesty. ADHD kiddos, neurodivergent kiddos, recognize more nonverbal cues than the rest of us. So they know if you are pacifying them, they can pick up on if someone likes them, someone doesn't like them, even before the other person can really formulate it. They can pick up those nuances. So if you're not being super honest, you're going to lose with your kiddos because you're going to lose that respect, that knowledge that they know no matter how bad things are, you're going to tell them the truth. And that's super important for kiddos who need to know where they fit in the world. That goes for all kiddos, but especially our ADHD neurodivergent kiddos because they can pick up on that. I believe it's like 60-some% more than an average person without ADHD. So that is something that's super important. All right, our last one, which is a big one, emotional regulation. Now, with ADHD, neurodivergent kiddos, they struggle with emotional regulation. They struggle with emotional regulation. All teenagers do. All people can. But our ADHD and neurodivergent kiddos struggle with it more than others. That's why if you have two kiddos, both ADHD isn't one size fits all. There's always variations. So you can't, when we're dealing with these emotional regulations, we need to normalize. It's normal to be frustrated. It's normal to feel like, I don't want to do this, this sucks. Okay, well, you know what? It might, but we got to get it done anyway. Like, we need to normalize those frustrations. Let them feel that. Give them parameters to feel those frustrations, that annoyance, that disappointment, that reality, because that reality is not going anywhere. It will always be there. And learning how to work through these things is the best tools we can give our kiddos, no matter what age. So set a timer. You know your kid better than anyone else. I had a parent ask me one time, she said, what do you do when your kid just starts screaming and crying? I said, well, depends on the family. But I said, Grace, I'd give her time. You got 5 more minutes of this. And after that, we're done. We're moving on. That works for some families who have, I'm ADHD, my daughter's ADHD. We're just an ADHD little hub of woo. So we had to have those strict rules and sections because otherwise we couldn't function properly as a family. It was tough at first, especially since her father and I were divorced. So she had lots of structure with me, not structure with him. So definitely, that's a big change, especially when you're dealing with blended families, changing families that are going through different situations, grandma's house to mom and dad's house. All of those things are different. So those standards and goals for each house they are also different. So we have to let them have a safe space to say what they want to say. Of course, respect. Always respectful. But let them breathe. Let them speak it out. Let them say it. Let them feel it or write it. Whatever works for them. Let them do that so that they learn how to start handling these things, these life things that are never going to go away. They're always going to be there. So if we give them the tools and the skills to help them learn how to process these feelings, then we are really helping them far more than just education, but in life. We are giving them keys to life. So my final message for this is remember that All kiddos struggle with emotional regulation, internally or externally. But just remember to be a little more tender with our neurodivergent kiddos because they struggle with it more than the average kiddo. All right, any questions?
Have you found systems that work better when allowing them to make their choices, maybe a whiteboard, a notepad? We tend to go through those because I'm ADHD too. I see these ideas and they work as long as I'm implementing them, but I'm not consistent. Is there something that you suggest for our older ones? Let's look at our 14 and above. What?
So for 14 and above, they've kind of got their structure. They kind of know where they excel. They also know what they don't want to do. So I would definitely encourage you to have that very frank conversation. Okay, what do you need? Are you where you need to be? And if they say no, you cannot freak out on them. Like, okay, they're being honest. They're telling you. So if whiteboards work for them, that's great. But then you have to do that follow-up question. Do you like writing on the whiteboards, or do you remember it better if you use the whiteboards? So that's the key. I would go with the follow-up question of, is it what you like because it's easier or it's fun, or is it what actually helps you the most? And another thing with ADHD kiddos and gifted kiddos, using different colored ink pens, highlighters, things like that, that is that stirs up their neurons and they remember better. Not all of them, but especially our visual learners. You see that a lot with our creative kiddos. They really thrive with having different colored pens, and we went through the gel pen, life and Sharpies and every color highlighter. It's a matter of what works for them, but with that, if they say, no, this is what helps me the best, but you see okay, I'm not seeing progress, then we got to talk about it again, all right, and just be frank, all right, you said this is what works best, but I'm not seeing it, so help me understand. And a lot of, I would say 90% of the problems with working with your ADHD kiddos is just frank communication. Just asking and being ready to receive the worst possible answer when you ask a question. Because if you can't handle it, you don't need to ask it. Because, and that's hard as parents, because we're like, well, we want to know. But then when they finally get to that trust level and that bombshell comes out, you're like, oh dear Lord. You have to be ready to handle that worst case scenario, because your kiddo, if they're ADHD, they're going to know whether you're okay or not. So that's another super important thing. Have the conversations, ask the questions, but be prepared. It might not be the answer you want. But great question. Did that answer your question? Awesome. Anyone else have any other questions? All right. Well, if you think of something, you can always contact me. Debra at lightupliteraturecurriculum.com. You can visit my website. If you have specific curriculum needs, you can definitely contact me about that. But if you just need advice, you need a guiding focus with the ADHD kiddos. I am an ADHD mom, an ADHD kiddo, an ADHD adult professional. And yeah, it can be hard. So pat yourself on the back. Remember, you are important too. And while this is a journey with your kiddos, it's also a lifelong journey with you. So if that's something that sometimes we forget, and we forget about our self-care, so make sure not only are you taking care of your kiddo, but you're taking care of you too. All right, thank you so much for coming.